Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Woodman, and I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to talk about active measures bad actors use to get people in Western democracies to lose confidence in their democratic systems and democratically elected officials. This is important because since democracies rely on their citizenry to believe in it, any attempt to sow enough doubts into democracy can increase the chances of the citizenry not believing in their democratic institutions. We'll go through some types of active measures and an example of this being used in real life. Here are 4 types of active measures. 1, there is whataboutism, which is a way to short-circuit a discussion, deflect blame, and throw a person off balance. It works like this. Quote, the Soviet Union labor camps are an abomination and a human rights disaster. Quote, unquote. Quote, what about lynchings in the American South? Unquote. Doing this is an attempt to devalue the severity of a particular situation by saying another situation is either as worse or worse than the other situation. It is also seen as a distraction from focusing on one issue at a time and trying to bring something up that is irrelevant. 2, there is censorship through noise. Noise is the name of a Russian propaganda technique that helps spread and give credence to disinformation. They do not shut down truth tellers. Instead, they release a lot of noise, putting lies alongside the truth to elevate the lies. Instead of silencing dissenting voices, they use a megaphone to drown them out. Here are some example statements of this. Quote, democracy is a lofty idea that will always fail, unquote. Quote, people do not have an equal voice. Rich people in America have more power, unquote. Quote, democratic leaders are all corrupt, unquote. Quote, leaders of a democracy are hypocrites. Russian leaders at least are upfront about the fact that they slant the news in their favor, unquote. Quote, the United States pretends to be a democracy, but what about lynching in the South? What about suppression of black votes, unquote. Quote, you see, our station points out the virtues of democracy. We said on the air that in a democracy, all people have a voice in government. We also added more facts and opinions so people can decide for themselves, unquote. Quote, do American stations ever point out the virtues of the Soviet government? No, their media is one-sided, unquote. As you can see, the point of having noise is to raise all these doubts about democracy as an attempt to downplay any pro-democracy viewpoints. It is usually hard to silence someone's viewpoints, but when anti-democratic voices are louder than the pro-democracy voices, the anti-democratic group controls the narrative of how ineffective democracy is. 3, there is false balance, which expands on the noise method. Suppose there is a discussion on an issue between 2 people. One person is an actual expert and the other person has no expertise in the field. When they are placed together to talk about the issue, the 2 of them give out competing viewpoints that leaves the listener confused and unsure what the right answer is. Instead of going along with the expert's insights, they hear the non-expert's insights and they can drown out what the expert says. The false balance comes in when we give both the expert and non-expert equal weight, instead of factoring in how much they truly know about an issue. Let's look at an example on climate change. The host says, quote, we have here 2 opposing views of climate change. First, we will show you a clip from Wallace Broecker, unquote. Wallace Broecker says, quote, even reducing the use of fossil fuels may be too little too late. We are heading towards the warming of the earth, which will cause massive disasters and can only be remedied with drastic means, unquote. The truth is the host neglected to say that Broecker, who was held up by academics as the greatest geoscientist of the past 100 years, was the Newberry Professor of Geology at Columbia University and author of more than 500 peer-reviewed scientific papers and several well-received books on the science of climate change. The host then says, quote, we will now show you a clip from Senator James Inhofe from Oklahoma, unquote. James Inhofe says, quote, "Climate change is a hoax. The Earth goes through natural changes, and we are currently in one of them. The Environmental Protection Agency is akin to the Gestapo. They are out to rob our liberties," unquote. The truth is, the host neglected to mention that Senator Inhofe received more than $2 million in political contributions from the fossil fuel industry. At this point, the viewer will give up and not know what to believe. This is what happens when the host does not give full transparency about who these two people are in terms of their educational and professional background, as well as potential conflict of interests. When someone does not factor that background information in, they will end up treating the two figures' opinion with equal weight. Again, that is where the false balance comes in, and we let the non-expert's viewpoint drown out the expert's viewpoints on an important issue, just because we are not considering each person's authority on the issue. 4, there is the Firehose of Falsehood, which is a rapid and continuous stream of lies that overwhelms the listener. The liar exhibits a shameless willingness to tell contradictory and outrageous lies. It is a way of undermining truth by making it impossible for anyone to focus on the facts. It is like you get overwhelmed with so much information at once and you decide to leave in the middle of it because it is too much to process. But you are still left with thinking about that information anyway and might go along with it, regardless if it is true or false. Liars have an advantage. The truth is often mundane, boring, nuanced, and too complex to fit into a soundbite. The liar, on the other hand, is free to invent. Invented stories can be designed to suit the needs of the moment and can be catchy and easy to grasp. As we said before in my previous videos, we are more likely to remember information that seems sure, simple, and persuasive, no matter if it is right or wrong. With these 4 types of active measures in mind, let's go through an example by looking at Russia and Ukraine. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, and regions that had been part of the Soviet Union gained independence. The Russian Federation was established as a constitutional republic, but democracy never took hold. Before the rule of law could be established, there was a mad scramble to control the nation's industries and resources. By the end of the 1990s, a few men had seized control of Russia's wealth and made themselves oligarchs. Oligarchy is a government ruled by the few, or a government in which a small group exercises control of it. The leadership is generally marked by corruption in that the leaders engage in self-dealing and self-enrichment. I talk more about an oligarchy in video set 2 on the types of political systems. The Russian Federation became what is often called a managed democracy. Oligarchs staged elections for show, and Russian citizens gradually realized these elections had no meaning. During the Soviet era, Putin was a Russian secret intelligence KGB officer. He admired Ivan Ilyin and followed his advice. Putin told the Russians they were pure and identified enemies who were trying to corrupt them. Putin presented himself as a strongman who would protect them and neutralize these enemies. He said, quote, "The descendant and immoral West is trying to corrupt and destroy the innocent and untouched Russians. The spread of gay rights is a Western plot by the global masters of capitalism. Gay rights is a front for a rising, corrupt homo dictatorship," unquote. Putin presented himself as the redeemer who has a mystic connection with the nation and the nation's destiny. He promised to restore Russia to its former greatness. He said, quote, "My namesake, the first Vladimir, to establish Russia as a Christian and holy nation in the year 923 CE. I will take Russia back to the time of purity and innocence before the West corrupted us," unquote. Within 10 years, Putin seized complete control over Russia. At the expense of Russian people, he made himself one of the wealthiest people in the world. He started looking to reestablish a Russian empire. For Ukraine in 1991, when the Soviet Union dissolved, Ukraine declared its independence and established a democracy. In 2014, the people of Ukraine took to the streets to protest Russian interference in their government and to protest against Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, who they believed was following Putin's orders instead of acting in the best interests of the Ukrainian people. In February 2014, the Ukrainian parliament voted to impeach Yanukovych. He fled to Russia. When Putin held a press conference, he stated, quote, "Ukraine is in tumult, under influence from the dissident West. Fascist rebels and Ukraine are attacking innocent Russian-speaking citizens of Crimea, unquote." None of this was true. When Putin met with close advisors, he stated, quote, "Ukraine has always been part of Russia. Russia's destiny and Ukraine's destiny are mingled and entwined. It is inconceivable to think of Russia without Ukraine. We must start working on returning Ukraine to Russia. We will begin with Crimea," unquote. Reporters would ask Putin about Russian soldiers causing trouble in Crimea against Ukrainians, but Putin would reject those claims and say those uniforms can be bought secondhand in shops all over Ukraine. Putin would say those soldiers are Ukrainian fascists who are making trouble by attacking Russia-speaking citizens of Crimea. He believed the Ukrainian leaders were trying to stir up unrest to divert attention from their economic crisis. However, soldiers told reporters that they are GRU, Special Force agents. Reporters realized Putin lied. On the other hand, Putin would accuse reporters of making unsupported statements and spread lies to the public. At another press conference, Putin would say the soldiers are there as peacekeepers protecting good Ukrainians from attack. He said, quote, "Western troublemakers are trying to set up a homo dictatorship in Ukraine. The West orchestrated Yanukovych's ouster, the same West that promotes homosexuality and sodomy. They are trying to bring their filth and corruption here," unquote. Putin also said the Russian soldiers would stay in Crimea until the situation normalizes, but Crimea had been normal until Putin sent soldiers to stir up trouble. The Russian invasion of Crimea, aided by propaganda techniques, was accompanied by a troll and bot disinformation campaign. Bots are automated accounts programmed in certain keywords and in response leave pre-written messages, and trolls are humans who operate fake accounts. Here are some examples of this. Quote, "We must decide whether we are Russian or Nazi," unquote. Quote, "Thank goodness the Russians are coming to rescue us," unquote. Russian-generated messages deployed by bots and trolls flooded Ukrainian and Western social media with tens of thousands of messages intended to confuse people. Ukrainians who had decades of first-hand experience with Russian tactics were able to withstand the disinformation campaign. Americans were largely unaware of Russian techniques at the time, so many believed the disinformation they were fed. This shows that when you do not know the truth behind something you see for the first time and it sounds convincing to you, you tend to believe it and not tune it out. This example shows how Putin did not like Western democracies and Ukraine being independent and would find ways to discredit them to justify violence against them. In conclusion, the active measures we went through are designed to weaken democratic societies by eroding the public's trust in truth, institutions, and one another. Through tactics like whataboutism, censorship through noise, false balance, and the Firehose of Falsehood, anti-democratic actors create confusion, overwhelm citizens with too much information, and distort reality. These strategies are powerful because they exploit natural human tendencies, our desire for simple and non-complex explanations and balance, even where none exists. The example of Russia and Ukraine shows how these techniques can be weaponized to justify aggression. manipulate public opinion, and destabilize certain democracies. When we understand these tactics, bad actors will have a hard time deceiving us with the tactics since we will not believe them. Democracies depend on informed citizens to recognize these types of manipulation and fight back against them. Doing so will help us strengthen our democracy and not give it up. In the next video, we will talk about Russia's interference in the 2016 US presidential election. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and turn on the post notifications so you will be notified when I post my next video. I appreciate your support. Remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you are the changemaker our society needs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon.